Missouri versus Biden, or excuse me, Murthy versus Biden now. Where are we in the process? And now that you know this about the government, and I mentioned surveillance because I know it's not technically in the sense that maybe you were thinking about it, but again, if the government is censoring, and we saw from the emails that you obtained during discovery, they're obviously monitoring what's going on Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, all of these things. So that's what I referred to by what I was meaning by surveillance. Now that we know this, that the government is doing this, that the White House, the Biden administration was basically telling them they had to, pull accounts and post down, and that they complied. How do we respond to that as American citizens? Like, where do we go with this information?
Well, so the Supreme Court just heard the case last month, March 18th. So actually, I just forgot it's May. We expect a decision in June. It could come out in May. We'll see. The argument was they were not as hostile to the government as I would have liked to see. It might have been because we were up there on a win, and I think they believed that the court below, the Fifth Circuit, went too far in what they were restraining. But what I'm afraid they're going to say is that it's okay for the government to work with these companies to monitor and censor speech if the companies are voluntarily engaged in it. They may say they're not able to coerce the companies, and some of that was going on, where there were like threats made. If you don't censor this vaccine misinformation, we're going to have to do something about it. Coming from the White House, that's a pretty scary. But I'm afraid they'll be able to say that the companies can work with the government. And that would be really problematic because a lot of the censorship that was going on actually is kind of done voluntarily on the part of the companies. They're like, and another thing to note is that there's a sort of inherent power imbalance where the government has threatened the companies in the past. The companies have a lot of motivation to please the government and to be in the government's favor in order to get certain benefits and not not have consequences. So even in our actions that appear to be voluntary, I'm hesitant to sort of paint them that way. But in any event, we'll see what happens. I mean, the other thing is there's a committee, Weaponization of Government Committee, which is a subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee, and they're contemplating legislation to sort of prohibit this kind of thing. I mean, the First Amendment is a floor, not a ceiling. So Congress could pass a bill saying that the government and social media companies working together is unlawful for whatever reason.
That's interesting. It's funny that not funny that you say that, but like the way that two sources, two media publications described the case. The New York Times described the lawsuit as a First Amendment case that has challenged the government's ability to combat false and misleading narratives about the pandemic, voting rights, and other issues that spread on social media. So this case has larger implications than just COVID-19. Conversely, the Missouri Attorney General described it as the court's ruling, as preventing the violation of First Amendment rights of millions of Americans. And he added, Missouri will continue to lead the way in the fight to defend our most fundamental freedom. So it's just this play with words, but I can see what you're saying, that the Supreme, it's just a matter of framing, right? They just frame it in a certain way. What's voluntary? And like you said, who is voluntarily defying orders from the White House?
And who decides what's true and false? That's the other thing. And the government was the number one purveyor of misinformation during COVID. Right. They said the vaccine would stop transmission. That was a lie. They knew, and they also had information that it didn't. Mm-hmm. They said masks worked. That was a lie. We all know now masks don't work. They said lockdowns would quell the spread of COVID. That was a lie. Everything was a lie. And so for them to, and I think our case illustrates beautifully, again, why we have a First Amendment, because, Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff, these are top epidemiologists from Stanford and Harvard, opining on the areas of their expertise on social media. And one of the famous quotes Kulldorff was censored for was saying that he was responding to somebody who asked whether naturally immune people and children need to get, or everyone needs to get the vaccine. And he said, no, it's very good for elderly people. Naturally immune and children don't need it. And that was censored by Twitter as misinformation. We now know that it was flagged by the Election Integrity Partnership, which was working very closely with government agencies, basically funded by them. And so it was sort of a launderer for this sort of censorship. So the government could launder their activities through these third parties and then claim they're not involved in the censorship. But anyway, I mean, the fact that you have some, probably 22-year-old at Twitter censoring Martin Kulldorff because what he says doesn't match what the CDC says it's shocking. And it shows why we need robust debate in this country, not censorship.
I saw the congressional hearings where I can't remember what representative it was. It's a woman, and she was like, "Are you a doctor? Are you an epidemiologist?" And it's like a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
She's like, no. She's like, "How do you have the right? Like, on what's the basis for you deciding that post needs to go down?" It was pretty impressive. I am loving our conversation, but this is really stressing me out. I mean, this is, I mean, we all knew it, right? We all knew that we knew we've had our posts taken down and we couldn't follow people or we saw it on a small scale, but to have the US government double down on this, to have the emails to expose them like this, is a little bit concerning. I guess another option, in addition to when that bill hopefully comes out from the subcommittee on the weaponization of government, is that what the committee was called?
I don't know of a specific bill. I'm just saying I know that's one of the things they're contemplating.
So we should work on support our representatives if that comes out and get them to vote on it.
Bill. I mean, of course you have to be careful with these things because you don't want to give, I'm always also nervous about more regulation, but we'll
have to read it, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We'll read it when it comes out and then we'll decide. I have a